Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Nate and this is Nate's Vintage Trains. In this video I'll be discussing probably two of the most influential members of Southern California live steamers, Martin and Irene Lewis. I'll also discuss a bit about the manufacturer Little Engines, as well as the Lomita Railroad Museum and of course Southern California live steamers. Martin Lewis was born May 26, 1885 in Iowa. His career started as an electrical engineer and soon moved to Southern California in the early 1900s. He got a job working with Dale Gentry in San Bernardino at a Ford dealership, where both of them developed a V8 type engine which they hoped would be used in Ford automobiles. However, when these plans fell through, Martin Lewis moved to Wilmington, California in the 1930s, and he worked at Chris Craft Boats and Chrysler Marine Engines. In 1934, Martin Lewis founded a company called Little Engines, which made kits and parts for live steam locomotives. He did this because of his interest in railroading from when he was younger, growing up in Iowa. About this time, he met one Irene Edith Ott. She was born in 1899 in rural eastern Oregon. She grew up on a farm and got her education mostly on her own through some correspondence courses. After a divorce in 1929, she moved to Santa Barbara and worked as a waitress. She would marry Martin Lewis in 1937 and both lived in Wilmington. The two made parts and castings for Little Engines at their home, but they grew out of it by 1946 and purchased a few acres of land in Lomita, California. They also became members of the live steam group Southern California Live Steamers about this time. They built their house and behind it a building for making castings and parts for Little Engines. Two loops of track were constructed around the building's outback for demonstrating locomotives that they offered. Little Engines offered locomotives in three standard scales: 1.5 inch scale, or 1/8, 1 inch scale, or 1/12, and 3/4 inch scale, or 1/16. This setup became the primary club track by 1948 for Southern California live steamers. Meetings would be held here monthly for the next few decades. Martin Lewis died in 1949, and Irene took over the Little Engines manufacturing and, of course, the SCLS track. There was a short publication in the early 1950s called the Miniature Locomotive Magazine. This contains many articles from clubs around the United States, including SCLS, when it was published between 1952 and 1954. One of these is regarding an event that happened in 1954 at Southern California Live Steamers. This event was the 22nd annual convention for the Brotherhood of Live Steamers. The article reads, in part, "The Brotherhood of Live Steamers' 22nd Annual Convention, held September 4th, 5th, and 6th at Southern California Live Steamers track in Lomita, proved to be a great success. Many of the old-timers who have attended similar roundups for the past 20 years thought that the spirit of friendship and cooperation was particularly noteworthy. Charles A. Purinton, Secretary of the Brotherhood of Live Steamers for the Eastern Region of the United States, and Harry L. Dixon, Secretary for the Pacific Region, were present and contributed in large measure towards the interest of this meeting as ambassadors of goodwill. The scribe counted 33 locomotives under steam, of which 17 were 3/4 inch scale, 14 1 inch scale, and 2 1.5 inch scale. The display tables and clubhouse showed 15 engines in various stages of construction, 3 traction engines, 1 copper boiler, and an assortment of stationary engines. The movement of trains loading and unloading of passengers were carried out with dispatch, much like the discipline and order of the big railroads. This coordination was achieved by the cooperation of all railroad personnel. In the 1950s, some of the Little Engines locomotives were used in Hollywood films, including The King and I and The Greatest Show on Earth. In 1965, after a visit to the Colorado Railroad Museum, Irene Lewis had the idea to use some extra land next door to her home for use as a railroad museum. A depot was built in 1965, which was based on the Boston and Maine's Greenwood Station in Wakefield, Massachusetts. Soon, a Southern Pacific 260 numbered 1765, built in 1902, was acquired, as well as a wooden Union Pacific caboose, a wood boxcar, and a steel tank car. The caboose was in fact a Christmas present, which was wrapped up by Union Pacific and presented by Santa to Irene Lewis. The Lomita Railroad Museum officially opened in 1967 and dedicated to Martin Lewis, Irene's late husband. The museum was soon after donated to the city of Lomita for their operation. In 1979, at 80 years old, Irene sold little engines to Moody Braun, and Southern California Live Steamers continued to use the track. In 1987, the Southern California Live Steamers Torrance Division was created through an agreement with that city, where the use of city land was donated as long as rides were free to the public. SCLS would have the Torrance and Lomita divisions for a few years. Irene Lewis passed away in 1990 at the age of 91 years old, and soon after, in the early 1990s, Little Engines moved out her former home, and the Southern California Live Steamers track were demolished and torn up. This area is now the parking lot for the Lomita Railroad Museum and park with a water tower and a single display track. An old Amtrak coach was displayed here for a short time, and now a Santa Fe caboose stands also on this track. Little Engines is now headquartered in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, still selling parts and kits to live steam enthusiasts for locomotive construction. The Lomita Railroad Museum is open Friday to Sunday, most weekends, to the public. Southern California Live Steamers is still alive and well at its Torrance location near Wilson Park. The Lomita Railroad Museum, however small, is my favorite museum since I grew up so close to it, about maybe 2 miles away from there. Thank you for watching this video, and if you do like this sort of stuff, please consider subscribing, like this video, comment down below to tell me what you think. There's more videos to come, so please do stay tuned. And as always, I'm Nate for Nate's Vintage Trains, reminding you to keep it old school. And until next time, God bless, and of course, Merry Christmas.